Live from Columbia, this is WIS News 10 at 6. Live, local, now.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome into your news at 6. Day 23 of the Murdaugh double murder trial. Testimony wrapping up just minutes ago.
Defendant Alex Murdaugh took the stand, first being questioned by the defense, taking his own defense, and then he was cross-examined before the jury was dismissed for the day. They will return at 9:30 tomorrow morning to continue questioning from prosecutors. Greg Adeline joining us live outside the Colleton County Courthouse, leading off our team coverage this evening. Greg, compelling testimony today.
Indeed, it was, Billie Jean. Very compelling testimony because this was a bruising cross-examination. For the past hour and a half, we heard Creighton Waters lay into Alex Murdaugh, really hitting the credibility of Alex Murdaugh in a way, frankly, that we have not seen in this trial. And it was so compelling because it was done face-to-face with the defendant himself. Alex Murdaugh on the stand earlier on, speaking very emotionally about the murders of his wife and son. And you knew that when this cross-examination would begin, you knew that there would definitely be some fireworks, and really there were, as Creighton Waters hit that credibility angle time and time again. Murdaugh's strategy from the stand, it would appear, was admit to many crimes, including financial crimes, admit to lies, admit to everything, except the murders on June the 7th, 2021. Now, really, Creighton Waters did a very good job highlighting to this jury that Alex Murdaugh is a seasoned pro, an attorney who has spent years in the courtroom, in this very courtroom to be exact, knowing how to work evidence, knowing how to work a jury. And as Creighton Waters was seeking to establish throughout that cross-examination, Alex Murdaugh is somebody who he said would lie to people straight-faced without remorse. Waters reminding Murdaugh that he said that he was never at the kennels until today. Months after months after months of lying about it, not only to law enforcement, but also to his family. Alex Murdaugh admitting that he did. We'll talk about that with Nick Neville in just minutes. But Waters sought to do a lot with his cross-examination, dealing a lot with the Murdaugh family legacy, talking about how the Murdaughs held down the solicitor's office for close to 100 years and how Alex Murdaugh really had no problem flaunting that in many ways, flashing a badge whenever was convenient for him. Perhaps if he'd get pulled over by law enforcement, he'd have that badge in his cup holder. And Creighton Waters said he also flashed that badge in 2019 after the boat crash, when Paul was at the hospital after that crash. Creighton Waters showed a picture to Alex Murdaugh of Alex Murdaugh wearing that solicitor's badge on the outside of his pants. And that was a very powerful moment, how he showed, or at least attempted to show to this jury, that Alex Murdaugh was somebody who was seasoned, somebody who was comfortable, and perhaps working a situation to his advantage. Murdaugh himself admitting that that badge had a warming effect on law enforcement. And it was interesting, in this cross-examination, he looked directly at Creighton Waters, as opposed to looking at the jury throughout the morning, sobbing in some ways. Let's take a listen to a very key moment where Creighton Waters called Alex Murdaugh on his difficulty in lying to different clients. Take a listen.
Do you have any independent recollection of a time where you sat down and looked that person in the eye and you were lying to them and convincing them that everything was okay while you stole their money? Do you remember it, even one of them?
I'm sure I do.
And so, again, you see that there was no rebuttal from Alex Murdaugh saying, yeah, essentially I did lie to these people. And Creighton Waters saying, you know, if Alex Murdaugh could admit to lying to people who were very vulnerable in many cases, in one case is a quadriplegic who he admitted to stealing money from, another from a teenager who he admitted to stealing money from, Creighton Waters making the argument to that jury, he has no problem lying to you too. At least that was the big takeaway in his cross-examination that is just now getting underway. Let's get over to Nick Neville reporting for us live. Nick, it was stunning earlier this morning. You could hear a pin drop as Alex Murdaugh got sworn in, and when he took the stand, he said some things that we had never heard before about June the 7th, 2021.
Yes, he did, Greg, including one of those main inconsistencies with his timeline from the night of the murders. He sought to explain his lie as to why he was actually at the kennels the night of the murders when he said he was never there. He said that his judgment was clouded because of his opioid addiction. He also said that he had a distrust of law enforcement, but multiple times he said he emphatically denied the murders of his wife and son. Now, as he was testifying under this direct direct examination, his body was turned towards the jury, and he was rocking back and forth. He was at times sobbing as he discussed his wife and son. Now, again, he said multiple times that he never would hurt his wife and son. He said, quote, to Jim Griffin, Mr. Griffin, I didn't shoot my wife or my son any time ever. He did, of course, admit to lying about being at the family dog kennels. He said that as his drug addiction evolved over time, he would get in situations where he would be paranoid. He said this really could be triggered by anything. Jim Griffin asked him why he continued to lie about this, and he said, oh, what a tangled web we weave. He said once he started to tell that lie, and he told that lie to everyone, investigators, his family, he said he just had to keep it up. He also testified that Maggie asked him to go down to the kennels that night. That's something that we had not previously heard before. He said he drove a golf cart there, got a chicken out of the family dog Bubba's mouth, and he was only at the kennels for a short period of time, he said, and then he said he went straight back to the house, to the air conditioning, emphasizing the word straight there. He says he took a brief nap, then went to his mom's Alameda home, and after he returned, he says he discovered the bodies. He said he paused before answering that question from Jim Griffin before saying that it was so bad, sobbing during that time as well. He says that as he checked the bodies for pulses, he got blood on his fingertips only. You'll remember that Deputy Laura Rutland, who responded to the scene, described his appearance that night as clean from head to toe. He also went on to contradict testimony from his mother's caretaker, Shelley Smith, who said she saw him carrying a blue tarp-like something into his mother's Alameda home after the killings. He denied that. He denied ever seeing a blue raincoat. Now, during that cross, there were some tense moments where Creighton Waters went case by case, where situations where Murdaugh stole money from clients and his law firm, trying to paint the picture of someone who will lie repeatedly. Let's take a listen to part of that key exchange.
You have charged me with murdering my wife and my son, and I have sat here for all these weeks listening to all this financial stuff that I did wrong, that I'm embarrassed by. I'm happy to talk to you about as much of that as you want to talk about. I'm required to talk about it as much as you want to talk about it. But the fact is I cannot specifically remember sitting down. The details that you're asking me for, I can't tell you. But what I can tell you is that in all these financial situations, I stole money that was not my money. I misled people that I shouldn't have misled, and I did wrong.
Another interesting thing to note, as Murdaugh was testifying today, he kept referring to his wife as Mags and his son as Paw Paw. Those are nicknames that we never heard him use in any of those interviews with investigators. Reporting in Walterboro, Nick Nebel, WIS Newstown.